Welcome back to Casablanca. In this episode, we will be talking about A Knight's Tale, which is a 2001 comedy directed by Brian Helgeland and starring Heath Ledger, Paul Bettany, and Shannyn Sossamon. It was also written by the director. He did a lot on this. I watched this movie as a kid. I saw it like 100 times, but I hadn't seen it in like 20 years, so I didn't remember a lot about it. I remember it was a comedy set a long time ago in like Knight's days, obviously. And so I remember, like, I wanted to cover it, and I was like, oh yeah, nostalgic, yeah. But as I'm watching it, I'm like, I just got like a whole greater appreciation for it. Like, I'd seen it since I was like between 13 and 15. And since that time, I've read the Canterbury Tales. Not the original. It was... Okay, the Canterbury Tales is in English, but somebody, like, translated it from Old English to Modern English, and I could understand that one, and I read that one. So, yeah, it was an English book that needed an English translation. Anyway, I understood a lot of the references. Apparently, this is an adaptation of The Knight's Tale, which is the first story of the Canterbury Tales. In fact, one of the characters, the character played by Paul Bettany, is Geoffrey Chaucer, who is the author of the Canterbury Tales. And this is supposed to be... Technically, this isn't supposed to be an adaptation. It's supposed to be... It's presented like it's the story that inspired Chaucer, because like several times there are different there's like moments where he's like, I'm going to write about you. I'm going to immortalize you, and people will not forget you, and stuff like that. And then like at the end, he's like, you know what? This gives me an idea for a story. I should write this down. And so, like, it's presented like this is the true story. Of course, at the time that I first saw it, I'd never heard of that. There's other things in here that I thought was really interesting. There's elements in here that are taken from history. It's kind of the movie. When I looked to see like when it's set, it just said 14th century. And it didn't say like what year it was set in, but I can tell you what year it's set in. In fact, one of the characters, he's basically the antagonist of the film, Count Admir. He is like an opposing knight, and he's like the big knight that Heath Ledger's character, William Thatcher, is wanting to take down the whole movie. There's a scene where he's sent off to battle. He's called out to fight in a war, and it actually shows the war. It shows him like on the battlefield, like not on the battlefield, on like the tents, and he's looking through like tournament stuff. And that battle, it's actually officially, it's the Battle of Poitiers. I'm probably way pronouncing that wrong. It was fought in September 1356. So we can get it down to a month. Not just a year. We can get it down to a month that this movie took place. September 1356. Which doesn't really change anything. It's still 14th century. Anyway... So, another thing, actually, before I go on, I talked about, the director, Brian Helgeland. He wrote, he's mostly written the movies that he's been attached to. He's directed a few, but the movies that he's written, I think, are more high profile. He's done A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, The Postman, Mystic River, 42, and most recently he wrote The Killer, which is by John Woo. It's a remake of the 1989 version. Heath Ledger, obviously, I think he's probably the most one. He's probably the most well known. When I watched this movie the first time years and years ago, he was the only person here I knew. Now I know like half the cast. Heath Ledger, famously, he was in 10 Things I Hate About You. He was in The Patriot, Brokeback Mountain, and obviously The Dark Knight was his final role. Well, second to last role. It's lesser known, but his actual last movie was called The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. I watched it. It's very unique. Because he died while making it, instead of like just like scrapping his parts or like rewriting the entire movie to take him out of it. I mean, he was like a major character in the movie, so they couldn't just like write him out of the movie, or they'd done a good section of the movie, so they couldn't just like reshoot it. So what they did was they kind of did a Doctor Who thing where they actually had like him go through something, and like the character did something and became Johnny Depp, and then it's called Transformation. I just looked. I was stalling. I don't know if you could tell. I was stalling while I looked up the Wikipedia page. They call it Transformation. His first transformation was into Johnny Depp. And then he turned into Jude Law and then Colin Farrell. So, instead of it ruining the movie, he died, so it's not like, oh, how dare you ruin this movie. Instead of rewriting the movie to write him out, or rewriting or shooting his parts, they actually worked it into the movie. So he did kind of a Doctor Who thing. His face keeps changing throughout the movie, and it's really interesting. I saw it. Oh, I didn't realize. Oh, Andrew Garfield is in this movie. The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. Very good movie. I liked it. Anyway. So, a lot of people think that The Dark Knight was his final film, but he actually finished that movie. He did not finish the other one. I'm not looking at the title right now. Paul Bettany was as another big name. I don't think he was very big at the time. I had never heard of him until MCU. But it was pretty far into the MCU when I actually heard of him. He was in A Beautiful Mind, which is... Okay, so when I watched The Beautiful Mind for the first time, I've seen it like 3 times. I saw A Beautiful Mind like a few years after the last time I saw A Knight's Tale. And I was like, wait, that's the guy from A Knight's Tale. It kind of looks like him. And then, like, I never actually looked into it. I'm just like, the whole time it was, like, actually kind of ruining the movie the first time I saw it. I was like, that's the guy from A Knight's Tale. But yeah, it's him. One of the hallucination people. I think he had red hair. I don't know. He was also in The Da Vinci Code. He was in Solo: A Star Wars Story, and obviously he was in the MCU. While I was looking through his Wikipedia, I was like, oh, he was in Iron Man as J.A.R. Oh, he was Jarvis. Oh, right, he was Jarvis. I'm so used to him being Vision. I forgot he was an AI before he was Vision, and Jarvis was absorbed into Vision, and it was a whole thing. You've got to have seen it. MCU's come such a long way, it's like we forget where it starts. It's like, oh yeah, it used to be more simpler. And then Shannyn Sossamon has been in a few roles. She's been in Rules of Attraction, One Missed Call, Sinister 2, and then she was in the show Sleepy Hollow, which I wanted to watch, but I never did get around to seeing that. So basically the plot of the movie, I'm 10 minutes in and I'm just now getting to the plot. Basically, film starts off, like, I guess you'd say the cold open, because anyway, there's a cold open, basically. It starts with the death of Heath Ledger's character's night person. It's about jousting basically, and it kind of establishes at the beginning that only someone of noble birth or someone who's knighted is allowed to joust. And William Thatcher is his character's name, Heath Ledger's character's name, and he, like, his person, his knight person that he's a squire for, dies, and him and Roland and Watt, which I'll get to that, and I'll get to Watt in a minute. Roland's played by Mark Addy, and then Watt is played by Alan Tudyk? I don't know. I've never heard that name. I probably just offended like a whole bunch of people. I've never heard of him. And he's in 28 Days. Dodgeball, I've seen that. I, Robot, 3:10 to Yuma. I've seen like all of these movies. Anyway, the three of them decide. Well, basically, I'm really bad at telling movies, or like, I'm good at talking about movies, but not so much synopsizing them. I also can't word. I'm not good at Englishing. He pretends to be a knight, basically. He puts on the guy's armor, and he pretends to joust. And then, while they're on the road, they come across Geoffrey Chaucer, which is Paul Bettany. And he's like, I write poems, and I'd write this and this and this, and like forms of nobility, like proof of nobility, and like family lineages or whatever he says. And then Heath Ledger's like, wait, did you just say like lineage of nobility or whatever? I don't remember. I just saw it like an hour ago, and I'm still like, hey, I can't quote this thing. So they fake a family tree to get into jousting. And whenever he goes up on stage to introduce William Thatcher, and he doesn't say that, Paul Bettany goes up on a little platform thing. He does this really over-the-top, dramatic introduction. And he's like, Sir Ulrich von Liechtenstein! And that's the name he gives him. And I've always remembered that name. I've always remembered Ulrich von Liechtenstein, and I've sometimes randomly said it. Sometimes I'll randomly go, Sir Ulrich von Liechtenstein. And people are like, what? It's a long story. Well, in my research, I found out Ulrich von Liechtenstein was a German Mindsinger and poet of the Middle Ages. He wrote poetry in Middle High German and was author of noted works about how knights and nobles may lead more virtuous lives. Ulrich was a member of a wealthy and influential ministerialist family from Liechtenstein in Styria. He was born about 1200 in Mirau in the... Okay, these are words I don't know. Oh, present-day country of Austria. I can't even say I can't English because these words aren't English, so I don't feel so bad, but I also feel bad because I can't pronounce other language words. I don't speak German. But also, Watt, who's the character I was saying, there's William Thatcher, there's Roland, there's Chaucer, and then there's another one, Watt, W-A-T, that's how you spell it. He and Chaucer keep fighting throughout the whole movie. It's actually kind of funny, like them going back and forth. It's actually kind of funny watching them go. In my research for this, I found out that Walter Tyler was a real person. He lived from 1341 to 1381, and he was the leader of the 1381 revolt in England. He led a group of rebels from Canterbury to London to oppose the institution of a poll tax and to demand economic and social reforms. While the brief rebellion enjoyed early success, Tyler was killed by officers loyal to King Richard II during negotiations at Smithfield, London. So that's 2 characters so far that were based on real people that were main characters of this movie, which is kind of funny. I remember that character from when I was a kid, and never would have I ever guessed that was based on a real person. There is another person who is based on a real person, and I can't remember the name. I'm looking right now. Edward the Black Prince. He was he was a prince of. He was a son and heir apparent of King Edward III. He died before his father, and so his son, Richard II, succeeded the throne. So he was a prince in the film. He never became king. He ended up being a major character. I won't go into spoilers, even though I don't think this film is streaming. When I looked, it said it wasn't streaming. So I was going... Okay, so normally, when I rent a movie, I rent it on YouTube. But for whatever reason, I went on Prime Video to rent it. And I saw it there. It said play instead of buy, rent, purchase options or whatever. And I was like, wait. Oh, so it is streaming. And then it says, you own this title. I was like, wait, I own this title. And I looked. I have a list of everything that every time I buy a game or a ebook or audiobook or a movie on streaming on the digital books or movies or whatever, I have different lists for like all these things. And so I checked. I checked my owned movies on Amazon. I do own some movies on the Amazon Prime, like that I actually bought, and I don't remember buying this one, but it is on the list. So at some point, I bought A Knight's Tale and I never watched it. Because like I said, I haven't seen this movie in like 20 years. If I knew I owned that this whole time, I would have watched it. Trust me, I would have watched this movie. I was going to buy it on Blu-ray, but I couldn't find it on Blu-ray. In fact, I'm pretty sure the DVD is really expensive, but I didn't want it on DVD. Hang on. Knight's Tale Blu-ray. And then I'm not going to find it. Wait, what? Oh, now it's on Blu-ray. It's $7 on Blu-ray. When I looked... Wait, maybe I looked up something wrong. I don't know. All I know is it's now available. And had I... You know what? I already own it. Well, I own it digitally, which means I don't own it. I licensed it. You know what? Add to cart. Not buying it now, but at some point, it's only $7. I am going to buy it. Anyway, that was a tangent. What was I talking about? I don't even remember. Oh, okay. One last thing. I will end it with this. So, like I said, A Knight's Tale is loosely inspired by The Knight's Tale from Canterbury Tales, written by Geoffrey Chaucer, who is in the movie as Paul Bettany. So again, this movie is inspired by The Knight's Tale. The Knight's Tale from Canterbury Tales. There is a recent movie that also was heavily inspired by The Knight's Tale. And when I saw the title of this movie on the Wikipedia, I was like, that can't be right. But I looked a little further and I'm like, oh, because I've seen this movie. I saw it in theaters recently. And I because my first thought was, there's no way. There's no connection at all to A Knight's Tale and this movie. But then I dug a little deeper and I started thinking about it. And I'm like, actually, you know what? It does make sense. Plus, it helps that I don't remember anything from the Knight's Tale story. Because I read that 15-ish years ago. and I still didn't make the connection between A Knight's Tale and this. Anyway, the movie is Challengers, the Zendaya movie that just came out recently. A Knight's Tale and Challengers are based on the same story. And cut.